Wade Hollis dropped to his knees in the snow, his hands trembling as he cut open the frozen burlap sack. Inside, wrapped in newspaper dated Christmas Day, a baby girl lay dying. Her lips were blue, her skin the color of death. But then her eyes opened, fixed on his face, and she whispered one impossible word: Papa. Wade hadn't been anyone's papa in 6 years. Not since he buried his daughter Abigail in the ground behind the barn. If you want to know how one whispered word saved 2 broken souls, subscribe to my channel and stay until the end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. December 28, 1885. Iron Creek Ranch, Wyoming Territory. The blizzard didn't howl. It screamed. Wade Hollis stood in the barn doorway at 11:30, his kerosene lantern swinging wild in his gloved hand. The wind tore across the prairie at 40 miles an hour, turning the world into a wall of white death. Temperature had dropped to 30 below zero, the kind of cold that killed cattle standing up and froze a man's breath before it left his lungs. 44 years old, owner of 2,000 acres of Wyoming rangeland, veteran of Antietam and Gettysburg. Wade had survived things that broke other men, but tonight he was just checking the horses one last time before the storm finished what it started. His Winchester rifle hung heavy on his shoulder. Wolves got desperate in weather like this. His buffalo coat weighed 20 pounds and his boots were good thick cowhide. None of it mattered much when the cold came at you like a living thing with teeth. The horses were settled, nervous but secure. Wade counted them twice. Force of habit. Then he pulled the barn door shut and dropped the crossbar. The ranch house stood 400 yards across the yard. In this whiteout, it might as well have been in Denver. He started walking, head down, 1 foot, then another. That's when he heard it. A sound. High, thin, wrong. Wade stopped. The wind screamed around him. But underneath, barely there, he heard it again. Not the wind, not an animal, something else, something dying. He'd heard plenty of dying sounds in his life. On the battlefield when he was 21 and stupid enough to think war was glory. On the prairie, when wolves got into the calves. In his daughter's bedroom 6 years ago, when Abigail burned with fever and he was 200 miles away closing a land deal. But this sound was different. It pulled at something deep in his chest. The place that had been frozen solid since the day they buried his little girl. Wade turned toward it, raised his lantern, saw nothing but white. The logical thing would have been to keep walking. Get to the house. Get to warmth. Forget whatever phantom sound the wind was playing with. Instead, he followed it. His boots crunched through the crust of snow. The wind punched him sideways. For a moment, the lantern's flame guttered and almost died. The sound came again. Closer now. Definitely not wind. Definitely human. Definitely small. Wade's heart started hammering against his ribs. He picked up his pace, stumbling through the drifts toward the service road, the old logging trail that cut through his property down to the creek. And there it was. A burlap sack. The kind used for hauling grain. Half buried in a snowdrift against a scrub pine. The fabric was stiff with ice. Something moved inside. Wade dropped to his knees. His hands shook as he pulled at the frozen fabric. The ties had been knotted tight, then frosted over. He yanked his knife from his belt and cut them. The sack fell open. Newspaper first. The Laramie Daily Sentinel, dated December 25th, 3 days ago. Christmas Day. Someone had wrapped the papers around whatever lay beneath, trying to give it insulation, trying to keep it alive just long enough. Wade peeled back the newspaper with hands that didn't feel like his own anymore, and saw her, a baby, maybe 4 months old, dark hair plastered to her skull, skin the color of old milk, lips blue as a corpse. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate gasps. So shallow he almost missed them. She was dying. Another 10 minutes, maybe less, and she'd be gone. But then her eyes opened. Dark brown. clear. They fixed on Wade's face with an intensity that stopped his heart. And she whispered, "Papa." The word cut through the storm like a knife. Impossible. 4-month-old babies couldn't talk, couldn't form words, couldn't look at you like they knew you, like they were choosing you, like they were claiming you as their own. But Wade heard it clear as church bells on Sunday morning. Papa. Not calling for her father, recognizing him as father, as safety, as salvation. Something cracked open in Wade's chest, something that had been frozen solid for 6 years. He didn't think. Thinking would have paralyzed him. He moved, ripped open his buffalo coat, pulled off his wool sweater, wrapped the sweater around the baby, first cocooning her tiny frozen body in the thick fabric. Then he pressed her against his bare chest, skin to fabric to skin, his body heat the only furnace that mattered. He closed the coat over both of them, sealing them together, and ran. 400 yards had never felt so far. The snow grabbed at his boots, tried to pull him down. The wind slammed him sideways. He couldn't see the house, couldn't see anything but white, had to navigate by memory and prayer. He fell once, caught his boot on a buried fence post, went down hard on his left side, twisted his body mid-fall so the baby stayed protected against his chest. Pain shot through his shoulder. He pushed himself up, kept running, fell again when a gust knocked him into a drift, went in up to his waist, had to claw his way out one-handed, the other arm locked around the tiny body pressed against his heart. The baby didn't cry. That was worse. If she'd been crying, screaming, fighting, that would have meant life. This terrible silence meant she was slipping away. Hold on. Wade gasped into the storm, into her frozen hair. Just hold on. We're almost there. His lungs burned. His legs felt like lead. The cold knifed through his clothes, through his skin, into his bones. But he kept moving. Because 20 years ago, on a different kind of battlefield, he'd learned that you don't stop moving until you reach the objective, or you die trying. And he'd be damned if he'd die tonight. The house materialized out of the white. Wade crashed through the kitchen door in an explosion of snow and ice and desperation. Ruth Stonehorse stood at the stove, her copper kettle steaming on the cast-iron surface. 58 years old. Shoshone. She'd worked for Wade for 18 years and seen just about everything life could throw at a person. But when she turned and saw his face, saw what he carried, she didn't waste time with questions. "Doc," Wade managed, his voice rough as sandpaper. "Get Doc Finch." Ruth moved, calm, efficient. She lifted the telephone receiver off its hook on the wall, cranked the handle 3 times sharp. Wade peeled off his coat. The baby rolled into his hands. So light, so desperately light, like holding air that might stop any second. He grabbed dish towels from the drawer, cleanest thing near, wrapped her tight. She still wasn't crying, just breathing fast and shallow and wrong. "Doc Finch," Ruth said into the telephone, her voice steady as stone. "It's Ruth at the Hollis Ranch. Wade found a baby. Yes now, maybe 4 months. She ain't crying." A pause. "He's coming. 20 minutes. Ruth hung up the receiver, turned to Wade. "Let me take her." Wade tried to hand the baby over. His arms wouldn't obey. "Mr. Hollis," Ruth's voice was firm. "She needs warming. I know what to do." "I can't. You're shaking too hard. You'll drop her." Wade looked at his hands, trembling violent, from cold, from something else. "She found you," Ruth said quietly. "You hold her while I work. Sit." Wade sat. The baby's eyes were closed now, her breathing still shallow, still fast. Her tiny fingers, barely bigger than matchsticks, were gray at the tips. Frostbite. Hypothermia. Severe malnutrition from the look of her. Dehydration. All the things that killed babies on the frontier. Ruth boiled water, found clean flannel blankets from the linen chest, moved around the kitchen with the kind of purpose that came from doing hard things in hard times. She'd lost her own boy, Samuel, 4 years back. Alcoholism took him at 32. His liver finally giving out on the reservation. She knew about holding death in your hands and begging it to leave. "Where'd you find her?" Ruth asked, not looking at him. "Service road, burlap sack." Ruth's hand stopped for just a second. "Lord have mercy." Newspaper dated Friday, Christmas Day, 3 days ago. Someone kept her alive that long, then changed their mind. Or didn't finish what they started. Wade thought, but didn't say. Ruth brought warm water in a porcelain bowl, a clean cloth draped over her arm. "Here." She showed him how to wet the baby's lips. "Just wet them. Don't flood her mouth. Let her tongue respond on its own." The tiny pink tongue moved, licked at the moisture. "First good sign," Ruth said. First indication that she was still fighting. "She got a name?" Ruth asked. "How would I know? I mean, what you calling her?" Wade looked down. The baby's face. So small. Dark hair starting to dry now, curling a little at the edges. Brown eyes moving under closed lids. Dreaming or dying. He couldn't tell which. "Nothing," he said. "She's not mine. I'm not naming something that isn't mine." "Okay." Ruth didn't push. Just kept working. They waited. Wade counted the baby's breaths. Lost count after 20. Started over. Lost count again. His daughter Abigail used to breathe fast like this when she slept. Charlotte had said it was normal. Wade had never stayed long enough to check. 20 minutes felt like drowning in slow motion. Then headlights swept across the kitchen window. An engine. A door slam. Boots on the porch. Doc Ezra Finch burst through the door with snow in his beard and his medical bag swinging from his hand. 49 years old. Used to be an army surgeon at Fort Laramie before the morphine got bad and he got discharged. Now he fixed horses and kept his head down and tried to forget everything he'd seen in the war. "Jesus, Wade." Doc kicked snow off his boots. "You collect strays like some men collect stamps." She was dying. "Let me see her." Wade stood. His legs didn't want to work right. Doc took the baby, laid her on the kitchen table, unwrapped the dish towels with hands that were scarred and thick, but moved with surprising gentleness. He worked fast, checked her pulse at the wrist, at the neck, listened to her lungs with his stethoscope, looked at her fingers, her toes, her eyes, pulled a penlight from his bag, checked her pupils. "Well, hell," Doc muttered. "What? She should be dead." Doc kept working. "Hypothermia, frostbite on 3 toes, minor thank God, severe malnutrition, dehydration." He pulled a brown glass bottle from his bag. "Antibiotics, veterinary grade, but it'll work." "Will she make it?" Wade's voice broke on the last word. Doc looked up, his eyes bloodshot and tired. Held something like kindness. "You got to her in time. That's what matters." He mixed formula then. The kind he kept for orphaned calves. Cow's milk cut with water. A spoonful of corn syrup for energy. Warmed it over the stove. Tested it on his wrist like Wade had seen mothers do. Lifted the baby, cradled her head with practiced ease, touched the glass bottle's rubber nipple to her blue lips. She didn't take it. "Come on, sweetheart," Doc whispered. "Just a little." Nothing. Wade's chest tightened. "Doc, she's not—" "Give her a minute." Doc tried again. This time there was movement. The baby's mouth opened. Took the nipple. Sucked. Weak at first. Then stronger. "There we go," Doc said. "There we go." Ruth made a sound, half laugh, half sob. The baby drank. Not much. Maybe an ounce. But enough. Enough to mean she wanted to live. enough to mean she was choosing to fight. Doc handed her back to Wade. Keep her warm. Feed her every 2 hours. Wake me if anything changes. Breathing color anything. Wade took her. She felt heavier now. Or maybe he was just paying attention. You just saved her life. Doc shook his head as he packed his bag. I kept her alive. You saved her. There's a difference. After Doc left, the kitchen fell quiet, except for the wind outside and the baby's breathing. Steady now. Stronger. 3 a.m. Baby asleep in a nest of flannel blankets on the kitchen table. Ruth making coffee that nobody would drink, but making it anyway because doing something felt better than doing nothing. Wade sat across from the baby, watching, counting breaths. What now? Ruth asked. Sheriff in the morning, missing persons report. And tonight? Tonight she stays. Ruth nodded. Set a cup of coffee in front of him he didn't touch. What you going to call her? I told you, she's not mine to name. She is tonight. Wade looked at the baby, thought about his grandmother. Hannah, tough woman, raised 6 kids through the panic of '73 when half the banks in the territory went under. Died when Wade was 12. But he still remembered her hands, strong and gentle. The way she could make bread from almost nothing and make you feel like you had everything. Hannah, he said, didn't mean to say it out loud. Ruth smiled. Good name. The baby stirred, made a sound. Not quite crying, just fussing. Wade stood, picked her up before he thought about it. Instinct. Muscle memory from years ago when Abigail was small and needed him, and he was actually there for it. Hannah quieted in his arms. Ruth watched from across the room, her dark eyes wet. What? Wade said. Nothing. Ruth. You're rocking her. You don't even know you're doing it. He stopped. The baby fussed again. He started rocking again, unconscious rhythm. She settled. I don't know what I'm doing, Wade said. Ruth poured coffee, pushed the cup toward him again. Nobody does. That's what babies teach you. Wade looked down at Hannah. She'd grabbed his finger in her sleep. Her whole hand couldn't wrap around it. So small, so breakable. He'd built this ranch from nothing. Negotiated land deals, fired men, buried men, survived the war, survived losing everything. But this tiny person who weighed less than a sack of flour and had already decided she belonged to him. She needs you, Ruth said quietly. Wade's throat went tight. For tonight. For tonight, Ruth agreed. But they both knew she was lying. Wade stood at the window, Hannah in his arms, watching the storm pass. First light maybe an hour away. The sky beginning to turn from black to deep blue at the edges. He didn't remember the last time he'd watched the sun come up with another person in the room. Didn't remember the last time he'd wanted to. Hannah sighed in her sleep, nestled closer to his chest. Her tiny fist curled against his collarbone. Wade Hollis, who hadn't smiled in 6 years, felt something crack in his face, something that hurt and felt good at the same time. Ruth saw, said nothing, let him have it. By morning, the man who hadn't held anything precious since his daughter died was looking for instructions on how to change a diaper, and Rose was trying not to laugh. Dawn came gray and cold. The storm had passed, leaving 3 feet of fresh snow across everything. Wade had slept maybe 90 minutes, his head on the kitchen table, one hand on Hannah's blanket nest. Ruth arrived at 6:30, found them like that. Mr. Hollis? Wade's head snapped up, disoriented. He checked Hannah first, still breathing, color better. Then remembered the world, the day, the problems. She needs changing, Ruth said. Feeding, clothes. You got any of that? Wade stood. His back screamed in protest. No. Then you better get some. I don't know what to get. He looked at Hannah, so small in her nest of blankets. What did babies even need? Ruth pulled a piece of paper from her apron pocket, a pencil from behind her ear, wrote in her careful script, handed him the list. Formula: glass bottles with rubber nipples, cotton cloth for diapers, safety pins, baby gowns, flannel blankets, Castile soap, talcum powder, olive oil. The paper felt like evidence of something. Evidence that this was real, that she was staying, at least for now. What if someone asks? Wade said. They will. What do I tell them? Friend's kid, Ruth said. You don't have to explain everything. They'll know I'm lying. Do it anyway. Wade looked at Hannah one more time, then left before he could think of reasons not to. Laramie General Store. 8 in the morning on a Sunday. 2 wagons already in the lot, which meant 2 people inside who'd have questions. Wade walked in. The bell over the door rang. Martha Calloway behind the counter, 62 years old, knew everybody, forgot nothing. Her eyebrows went up when she saw who'd come through the door. Wade Hollis never came in himself, always sent ranch hands for supplies. Wade Hollis, she said, surprise clear in her voice. What brings you out? He handed her the list without a word. Martha read it. Her face did something complicated. Surprise, concern, understanding all at once. She looked up. This for a friend? Yeah, flat, unconvincing. Uh-huh. She came around the counter. You know what size? Small, really small. Boy or girl? Pause. Girl. Martha's face softened. All right, honey, come on. She led him to the back aisle. Baby supplies he'd never noticed before lined the shelves. Martha pulled things down, explaining as she went. Formula. 3 kinds. This one's gentlest on the stomach. She handed him 2 tins of Nestlé's infant food. Bottles. Glass, not tin. Easier to clean. 4 bottles, each with a rubber nipple attachment. Diapers, cotton cloth, 2 dozen. Better to have too many than not enough. She stacked them in his arms. Gowns. You don't know her coloring, so we'll go neutral. White, yellow. She pulled down 4 tiny garments that looked too small to fit anything human. Talcum powder, Colgate brand. Best there is. Olive oil for the rash that'll come. Castile soap for bathing. Wade stood there, arms full, watching this woman who'd known him since he first came to Wyoming pick out baby clothes like it was the most natural thing in the world. Martha. She was left in the storm. I found her. Martha stopped, looked at him, really looked. She all right? Doc says yeah. And you're keeping her? I don't know. Maybe. For now. Martha touched his arm, brief and gentle. Then you're going to need more than this. She grabbed an empty crate from behind the counter, started filling it. More blankets, a porcelain basin for bathing, soft cotton towels, a wooden rattle, a rag doll with button eyes. Things Wade didn't know babies needed, but Martha apparently did. 40 minutes later, Wade stood at the checkout counter. The crate overflowed. Martha tallied everything up on her adding machine. That'll be $9.12. Wade handed her a $10 bill. Martha made change, handed him the coins, held his eyes. Your friend's got a generous friend. Yeah. She waited until he was almost at the door. Wade. He turned. Whatever you're doing, Martha said quietly. Keep doing it. Wade didn't know what to say to that, so he nodded and left. He loaded the crate into his wagon bed, drove home through snow that was already starting to melt in the weak winter sun. Thought about the nursery upstairs, the door he'd kept locked for 6 years. Abigail's room, her toys still on the shelves, her clothes still folded in the drawers. The wooden horse he'd carved for her 3rd birthday, still facing the corner where he'd turned it the day after they buried her. He could put Hannah in there, should put her there. It was the best room in the house, south-facing, warm, good light. But he couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The guest room would have to do. Wade pulled up to the ranch house. Ruth's wagon was still there. Good. He unloaded the crate in 2 trips, carried everything inside. Ruth was in the kitchen with Hannah, who was clean and fed and sleeping in a fresh nest of blankets. "You bought out the store," Ruth observed. "Martha helped." "I bet she did." Ruth looked at the wooden rattle, the rag doll. "Where you putting all this?" "Guest room, east side." "Not the nursery." It wasn't a question. Ruth heard what he didn't say, nodded. Wade carried the crate upstairs. The guest room was 12 by 14, never used. Impersonal as a hotel, white walls, 1 window facing the mountains, hardwood floor that needed finishing. But it was clean, and it was available. And it wasn't Abigail's room. He set up what he could, made a nest in the center of the bed, surrounded by rolled blankets so Hannah couldn't roll off. Set the porcelain basin on the dresser for bathing, the bottles and formula on the nightstand, the diapers stacked in the corner. It didn't look like much, but it was something. It was a start. Ruth appeared in the doorway, Hannah in her arms. The baby was awake now, looking around with those serious brown eyes. "You want to try feeding her yourself?" Ruth asked. Wade nodded, took Hannah carefully, supporting her head the way Ruth had shown him, sat in the straight-back chair by the window. Ruth handed him a bottle, showed him the angle, how to tip it so she didn't take in air. Hannah ate, watched him the whole time, studying his face like she was memorizing it. When she finished, Ruth showed him how to burp her. Pat her back, gentle, not too hard. Hannah burped, spit up a little on his shoulder. "There you go," Ruth said, smiling. "Now you're a real parent." Wade looked at the spit up on his good shirt, laughed, an actual laugh. The sound surprised him. Ruth's smile went soft. "You're good at this." "I'm good at following instructions." "No." Ruth touched his arm. "You're good at trying. That's what matters." Wade looked at Hannah, falling asleep against his chest. Warm and solid and real, so impossibly real. "She's here till we find where she belongs," he said. Ruth's smile turned sad. Maybe she already found it. That evening, Wade stood at the window of the guest room. Hannah asleep in her nest of blankets. The storm had passed, stars coming out, the world white and silent and clean. 6 years ago he'd stood at a different window, Abigail's window, looking at nothing, feeling nothing. Tonight he looked at Hannah, and felt everything. Too much. He didn't deserve this, didn't deserve a second chance, didn't deserve this tiny person who'd looked at him in a blizzard and whispered Papa like she knew him, like she'd been waiting for him. "I don't know if I can do this," he whispered to the sleeping baby, to the empty house, to himself. Hannah slept, didn't answer, didn't need to. She was here. And for tonight, that was enough. 6 days. 6 days since Wade pulled Hannah from that frozen sack. 6 days of feeding and changing and rocking and learning. 6 days of watching her breathe, counting each rise and fall of her tiny chest like it might be the last. And somewhere in those 6 days, Wade stopped counting the hours until she left. He started counting the minutes until she woke. January 4th, 1886. Sunday morning. 3 in the morning to be exact. Hannah wouldn't stop screaming. Wade paced the guest room, the baby pressed against his shoulder, his shirt soaked with her tears and his sweat. He'd tried everything. Bottle. She pushed it away. Diaper. Clean. Temperature. Normal. Nothing worked. She screamed. Not the hungry cry. Not the tired cry. The scared one. The kind that meant something hurt, and she couldn't tell him what. "Come on, sweetheart," Wade's voice cracked. Come on, tell me what you need." She screamed louder, her little body rigid with whatever pain or fear consumed her. Down the hall, a door opened. Ruth appeared in her flannel nightgown, her gray braid over one shoulder. She'd been staying in one of the empty bedrooms since the night he found Hannah, just until he got the hang of things she'd said. "I don't know what's wrong." Wade heard the desperation in his own voice. Hated it. "I've tried everything." Ruth came close, touched Hannah's forehead with the back of her hand, listened to her cry with the kind of attention that came from years of reading people's pain. "She ain't sick," Ruth said finally. "Then what? Sometimes babies cry for no reason. They just need comfort." "I'm trying to comfort her." "I know you are." Ruth looked at him, exhausted, desperate, terrified he was failing this tiny person who needed him. "But she can feel you're tense. Babies know when you're scared. Makes them more scared." "How do I not be scared when she's like this?" Ruth thought for a moment. "Music. You played for her before. Worked. Piano's downstairs. I can't take her down there now." "Not piano." Ruth's voice was gentle. "You got anything else that plays music?" Wade went still. His heart started hammering for a different reason. Ruth waited. "There's something," Wade said finally. "Abigail had a music box." Ruth's face softened. "Where is it?" "My study. Locked drawer. I haven't touched it in 6 years. Can you get it?" "Ruth, I don't think I can. That baby needs something." Ruth said, her voice firm but kind. "And you got something that might help. Question is whether you're brave enough to use it." Wade looked at Hannah, red-faced, inconsolable, trusting him to fix it. And he couldn't. He couldn't do this one simple thing. "Okay," he whispered. He carried Hannah downstairs to the study. The lamp burned low on his desk. He opened the bottom drawer with his free hand. The drawer he hadn't opened since the funeral. The music box sat there under a layer of dust. Wooden, hand-carved, 6 inches by 4. He'd bought it in Cheyenne the day Abigail was born. Spent $12 he couldn't afford because his wife Charlotte deserved something beautiful for giving him something perfect. He'd played it for Abigail every single night. Wound the little brass key on the side. Let the mechanism turn. Let the pins pluck the cylinder. And Brahms' lullaby filled the room like a blessing. Until the night he was in Denver, and Abigail burned with fever. And Charlotte sent him a telegram begging him to come home, and he said tomorrow. And Abigail died at 3 in the morning without him. Wade lifted the music box from the drawer. His hands shook, not from cold, from memory. Hannah screamed in his other arm. He had to try. He sat in his leather chair, put Hannah on his lap, held the music box in trembling fingers, wound the key just a little, let it play. 4 notes of Brahms' lullaby tinkled out, delicate and heartbreaking. Wade stopped it, couldn't bear more. Hannah cried harder. Ruth stood in the doorway, watching, saying nothing. Wade wound the key again. 6 notes. 8. Stopped it again. His vision blurred, but Hannah's crying changed. Still upset, still hurting, but listening now. Wade wound the music box a 3rd time. This time he didn't stop it. Let the full melody play. All 18 seconds of it. The mother figurine inside rotating slowly, holding her baby. Both of them carved from pale wood. Both of them suspended in a moment of perfect peace that Wade had lost 6 years ago. Hannah's crying slowed, hiccuped, stopped. She turned her head toward the sound. Watched the little figurine spin. Reached out one tiny hand and grabbed for the music box. Wade let her touch it. Let her fingers brush the smooth wood, the cool brass key. She sighed, a long, shuddering sigh that released whatever had been tormenting her, nestled into Wade's chest, closed her eyes. The song ended. Hannah's hand stayed on the music box. She didn't understand what it was, just knew it was beautiful. and it made the hurt stop. Wade sat frozen, the music box in one hand, the sleeping baby in the other, tears running down his face that he didn't try to stop. Ruth crossed the room, knelt beside his chair, put her hand over his. "She'd want this," Ruth whispered. "Abigail. She'd want this baby to have the music, to have you." Wade shook his head, couldn't speak. "You're right, she would." Ruth's voice was quiet. "She'd want you to keep living, keep loving, keep being a father." "I can't." Wade's voice cracked. "Ruth, I can't do this again. What if I fail her? What if I'm not there when she needs me? What if I lose her too?" "Then you fail trying," Ruth said. "And that's better than not trying at all." Wade looked at Hannah, sleeping peaceful now, one hand still touching the music box, trusting him, choosing him, claiming him as her own. "I don't know if I can let her go," he whispered. "Then don't." "It's not that simple." Ruth squeezed his hand. "It is." She stood, left him there in his study with the sleeping baby and the music box and 6 years of frozen grief starting finally to thaw. Wade sat in that chair until dawn, holding Hannah, the music box on his lap. He wound it 3 more times through the night, letting Brahms' lullaby fill the study each time. The first winding hurt like a knife between his ribs. The second hurt less. By the third, it felt less like grief and more like grace. Each time he thought about Abigail, about the nights he'd played the same melody for her, about the last night when he wasn't there, when she burned with fever and called for him, and he was 200 miles away, talking about land and money and things that didn't matter. But maybe Ruth was right. Maybe Abigail would want this, would want him to use her music box for another little girl who needed him, would want him to try again. The sky turned from black to deep blue to pale gray. Morning came quiet after the storm. Wade heard Ruth moving in the kitchen below, the clank of the cast-iron stove being fed, the smell of coffee drifting up the stairs. He carried Hannah down. She stirred but didn't wake, her face peaceful against his shoulder. Ruth looked up from the stove, saw the music box in his free hand, saw his face, said nothing, just poured him coffee and set it on the table. "She slept 5 hours straight," Wade said. "First time. Music helped." "Yeah." Ruth put eggs on a plate, set it in front of him. He didn't eat, just stared at his coffee. "You going to tell me now or later?" Ruth asked, sitting across from him. "Tell you what? Her story, Abigail's, or your own?" Wade was quiet for a long moment. "Which one you want? Whichever one's killing you louder." Wade wrapped his hands around the coffee mug. The heat felt good against his palms. Real. Grounding. "Abigail died 6 years ago," he said finally. "January 18th, 1879. She was 6 years old." Ruth listened. Didn't interrupt, just listened the way she always did, with her whole attention. "Charlotte died giving birth to her. Complications. So it was just me and Abby from the start. Me and her against the world." His voice caught. "I hired help. Nannies, housekeepers. But I was building the ranch, expanding, making deals. Gone more than I was home. You were providing for her. I was hiding from her." Wade's hands tightened on the mug. She looked so much like Charlotte. Same blonde hair, same blue eyes, same laugh. Every time I looked at her, I saw everything I'd lost. Ruth said nothing. "January 1879. I was in Denver. Cattle contract. Biggest deal I'd ever made. Abby got sick. Diphtheria. The telegram came at midnight. Said, 'Come home.' Said it was bad." Wade's voice went flat. Empty. "I said tomorrow. One more meeting. Just one more." Silence filled the kitchen. The kind of silence that held all the words Wade couldn't say. "Abby died that night, 3 in the morning. The nanny said she called for me. over and over. Papa, Papa, Papa. Ruth's eyes filled, but she didn't cry, just waited. I got home the next afternoon. She was already gone, cold, still, like a doll someone had forgotten to put away. Wade pushed back from the table, stood, walked to the window. I buried her next to her mother, behind the barn, where they could see the mountains. Mr. Hollis, I killed her, Ruth. His voice broke. Maybe not with my hands, but I killed her. I chose money over my daughter. I chose a contract over her life. The diphtheria killed her. I wasn't there. I should have been there. If I'd come home when that telegram arrived, she still would have died. Wade spun around. You don't know that. I know grief makes us blame ourselves for things we can't control. Ruth stood, came to him, put her hand on his arm. I know a 6-year-old girl dying of diphtheria probably couldn't have been saved even if her daddy was holding her hand. I know you've been punishing yourself for 6 years for a crime you didn't commit. I wasn't there. No, you weren't. And that's a sin you'll carry forever. But it's not murder. Wade's shoulders sagged. Then what is it? It's being human. It's making a choice you can't take back. It's learning too late what matters most. Ruth squeezed his arm. You failed Abigail by not being there. That's true. But you didn't kill her. Life did. Sickness did. God did, if you believe in such things. I don't know what I believe anymore. Then believe this. Ruth pointed at Hannah, still sleeping in her basket on the table. That baby needs you. Not your guilt, not your fear. You. The man who ran through a blizzard to save her. The man who held her all night. The man who played his dead daughter's music box because it was the only thing that might help. Wade looked at Hannah. So small, so peaceful, so completely unaware of the broken man who was holding her world together with trembling hands. I lost my boy, Ruth said quietly. Wade's head came up. Samuel, 4 years ago. Alcoholism. Liver gave out when he was 32. Ruth, I didn't know. I don't talk about it much. Her voice was thick. I tried everything. Rehab when we could afford it. Intervention, prayer, begging, threatening, loving him so hard I thought it might fix him. She wiped her eyes. Nothing worked. He died on the reservation. I was with him, held his hand. He said, "Sorry, Mama." And then he was gone. I'm sorry. I blamed myself for years. Should have done more. Should have seen it sooner. Should have loved him different. Should have. Should have. Should have. Ruth looked at him with wet eyes. But I learned something. You can't save someone who doesn't want saving, and you can't carry guilt for things you couldn't control. I could have controlled being there. You could have been there, yes, but Abigail still would have died. The diphtheria was too fast, too aggressive. How do you know? Because that's what diphtheria does. It takes children in hours, not days, hours. Wade stared at her. You don't know that for certain. No, but I know carrying guilt won't bring her back, won't change what happened, won't make you a better father to that baby right there. Ruth pointed at Hannah again. You want to honor Abigail's memory? Stop punishing yourself and start living. Be the father you weren't. Show up, stay. Love that baby like your life depends on it, because hers does. Hannah stirred in her basket, made a small sound. Wade went to her, picked her up, held her against his chest. She grabbed his collar, made her happy sound, the one she only made for him. I don't know if I deserve this, Wade said. Nobody deserves anything, Ruth replied. We just get what we get and do our best with it. The sound of wagon wheels outside interrupted them. Ruth went to the window. Sheriff's here. Wade's stomach dropped. Already? You knew he was coming. I know. He looked at Hannah, her tiny fingers curled around his collar, her brown eyes watching his face. I'm not ready. Nobody ever is. Sheriff Tom Dawson was 58 years old with a gray mustache and kind eyes that had seen too much frontier justice. He'd known Wade for 15 years, respected him, trusted him. But today he had questions. "Wade." The sheriff took off his hat as Ruth let him in. "Heard you found something in that blizzard." "Someone," Wade corrected. "A baby girl." "Mind if I see her?" Wade hesitated, then stepped forward. Let the sheriff look at Hannah. Dawson's face softened. "She's a pretty little thing. Looks healthy. Doc Finch has been checking her twice a week. She's doing good." "And you've been taking care of her?" "Yes, sir." The sheriff pulled out a notebook, a pencil. "Need to ask some questions. Standard procedure. You understand?" "I understand." They sat in the front room. Ruth took Hannah to the kitchen to feed her. Wade answered questions. What time did he find her? Around 11:30. Where exactly? Service Road 100 yards past the fork. What was he doing out there checking the horses? Heard crying. Followed it. What was she wrapped in burlap sack? Miller's grain from Billings. Any identifying information? Newspaper dated Christmas Day. Nothing else. The sheriff wrote everything down. You got the sack still? Burned it. Wasn't thinking. Just trying to save her. Dawson nodded. Understandable. He closed his notebook, looked at Wade with those kind, careful eyes. Wade, I have to ask. You know anything about this baby? Anything you're not telling me? No, sir. Never seen her before that night. Nobody came to you, pregnant girl? Someone asking for help? No. The sheriff studied him for a long moment. All right, I believe you. He stood, put his hat back on. I'm filing this as an abandoned infant. Case open. We'll check hospitals in the territory, see if anyone delivered recently and disappeared. And if you don't find anyone, then we figure out what to do with her. Wade's chest tightened. What does that mean? Means she goes to the county orphanage, standard procedure for abandoned children. She's not going to any orphanage. The words came out harder than Wade intended. Sheriff Dawson's eyebrows rose. Wade, she's staying here, with me, until you find her family. That's not how it works. There are procedures, paperwork, legal. Then I'll do the paperwork. Wade stood, faced the sheriff square. I'll do whatever needs doing, but that baby is not going to some institution where nobody knows her name or cares if she cries at night. The sheriff was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, just a little. You always were stubborn as a mule. I prefer determined. Same thing, different hat. Dawson headed for the door. I'll talk to the county, see what I can do. No promises, but I'll try. Thank you. Wade. The sheriff paused at the door. Be careful. Babies have a way of getting under your skin. Don't let yourself get attached to something that might not be yours to keep. Wade thought about Hannah, her tiny hand on his collar, the way she'd whispered Papa in the storm. Too late, he said quietly. After the sheriff left, Wade found Ruth in the kitchen with Hannah. The baby was fed and changed, and playing with a wooden spoon, banging it against the table with delighted concentration. What did he say? Ruth asked. He's going to try to keep her out of the orphanage. No promises. And if he can't... Wade looked at Hannah. She looked back, smiled, reached for him with both arms. He picked her up, held her close. Then I'll find another way. 3 days later, a county sedan pulled up to the ranch. Wade saw it from the barn, felt his stomach drop. He handed his tools to Jake, his foreman, walked to the house, tried to look calm. A woman got out of the sedan. Professional, gray suit, briefcase, kind face that had seen too much. Mr. Hollis. She extended her hand. I'm Helen Thorne, County Child Welfare Services. Wade shook her hand. His palm was sweating. Ma'am? I need to see the child, document the situation, standard procedure. She's inside. With Ruth. Ruth. Ruth Stonehorse. She works for me. Helps with the baby. Helen nodded, made a note in her book. May I come in? Wade wanted to say no, wanted to bar the door and tell this woman to leave and never come back. Instead, he stepped aside. This way. He led her through the house. Let her see everything. The guest room he'd converted to a nursery. The crib he'd bought in town. The bottles lined up on the dresser. The diapers stacked neat in the corner. The music box on the windowsill. Helen saw it all, made notes, asked questions. How often did he feed her every 3 hours? Who helped him, Ruth? Doc Finch. What were his plans? Keep her safe until her family was found. And if no family was found? Wade hesitated. Then I want to keep her. Helen looked up from her notebook. Keep her. Adopt her. Legally. Make her mine. Silence. Helen set down her pen. Mr. Hollis, do you understand what you're asking? I'm asking to be her father. You're asking to adopt an infant of unknown origin as a single man over 40 with no spouse and no experience raising children. I raised my daughter until she was 6. Your daughter who died. The words hit like a fist. Wade's jaw tightened. Yes, my daughter who died. Helen's face didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. I'm not trying to be cruel, Mr. Hollis. I'm trying to be realistic. Single male adoptions are rare, almost unheard of. The courts favor married couples, mothers, women. I don't care what the courts favor. I care about that baby. Why? What? Why do you care about her? You found her 6 days ago. You don't know her, don't know where she came from, don't know who her parents are. Helen leaned forward. So why do you want to keep a stranger's child? Wade looked at Hannah. Ruth was holding her by the window. The baby was watching them with those serious brown eyes. Because she needed someone, Wade said slowly. And I was there. Because she looked at me in that blizzard and said Papa like she knew me. Like she chose me. Babies can't choose. This one did. Helen was quiet. Mr. Hollis, I have to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Wade braced himself. Are you trying to replace your dead daughter? The room went cold. Wade felt Ruth stiffen across the room, felt his own hands clench at his sides. No. Are you sure? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a grieving father found a baby and saw a second chance, saw a way to fix what he broke, saw a replacement for what he lost. She's not a replacement. Then what is she? She's Hannah. Hannah's not her name. You gave her that name. Her real name. Her real name is whatever I call her, because I'm the one who saved her. I'm the one who feeds her and rocks her and sits up with her at 3 in the morning when she can't stop crying. Wade stepped toward Helen, his voice shaking. You want to know if I'm trying to replace Abigail? No. I can't replace her. Nobody can. She was my daughter and she died because I wasn't there, and I'll carry that guilt until they put me in the ground. He pointed at Hannah. But that baby is not Abigail. She's got dark hair where Abigail had blonde, brown eyes where Abigail had blue, different face, different cry, different everything. His voice cracked. I don't want her because she reminds me of what I lost. I want her because she reminds me of what I could still have, a reason to keep going, a reason to be better, a reason to show up every single day instead of hiding in my study waiting to die. Helen didn't move, didn't speak, just watched him with those careful, assessing eyes. You got 2 weeks, she said finally. Wade's heart stopped. 2 weeks. To figure out what you really want. I'll be back. I'll do another assessment. And then I'll make my recommendation to the court. She stood, closed her notebook. Mr. Hollis, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of people who wanted babies for the wrong reasons. Lonely people. Broken people. People trying to fix something that can't be fixed. She looked at Hannah. I've also seen people who just needed a chance, who had love to give and no one to give it to. She met Wade's eyes. 2 weeks. Figure out which one you are. She left. Wade stood in the middle of the room, shaking. Ruth came to him, put Hannah in his arms. You okay? No. What are you going to do? Wade looked at Hannah. She grabbed his collar, made her happy sound. I'm going to figure out which one I am. That night, after Ruth went home and Hannah was asleep, Wade did something he hadn't done in 6 years. He unlocked the door to Abigail's room. The smell hit him first. Dust, old wood, lavender, Charlotte's scent still lingering after all these years. He stepped inside. Everything exactly as it was. The day after the funeral, the day he'd locked this door and never looked back. The crib against the wall. The pink bedding faded from sunlight. Stuffed animals arranged on the shelf. Rabbit, bear, elephant, all covered in dust. Abigail's clothes in the dresser. The rocking horse in the corner. The one he'd carved from oak. Still facing away because he couldn't bear to see its painted eyes. Photos on the wall. Abigail at 6 months. 1 year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 months before she died. Laughing. Gap-toothed. Perfect. Wade stood in the center of the room and couldn't breathe. He sank to the floor, put his head in his hands, and for the first time in 6 years, he let himself cry. Not the quiet tears he'd shed in his study with Hannah. Real sobbing, body shaking. The grief he'd locked away, finally finding its way out. I'm sorry, he whispered to the empty room, to the photos on the wall, to his daughter's ghost. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I chose wrong. I'm sorry I let you down. He cried until there was nothing left. Then he wiped his face, stood up, looked around the room, at the life he'd frozen in time, the shrine he'd built to his own guilt. I can't keep doing this, he said out loud. I can't keep living in the past while the present needs me. He thought about Hannah, asleep down the hall, counting on him. Thought about Helen's question, are you trying to replace your dead daughter? Thought about the answer he'd given, and wondered if it was true. Wade walked to the window, looked out at the stars. Abby, he whispered, if you can hear me, if you're somewhere out there watching, I need you to know something. His voice broke. I will never stop loving you. Never stop missing you. Never stop wishing I'd been there that night. He pressed his hand against the cold glass. But there's a baby down the hall who needs a father. And I think I can be that for her. Not because she's you, because she's not you. She's herself. And she deserves someone who shows up. The stars didn't answer. But something in Wade's chest loosened, just a little. Help me, Abby, he whispered. Help me do this right. He left the room, closed the door behind him. This time, he didn't lock it. Down the hall, Hannah started crying. Wade went to her, picked her up, held her close. I'm here, he said. I'm right here. She quieted in his arms, grabbed his collar, sighed. I don't know what I'm doing, Wade told her. I don't know if I'm the right person for this. I don't know if I can give you what you need. Hannah looked at him, those serious brown eyes. But I'm going to try. Every day, every night, I'm going to show up and try. She made her happy sound. And Wade Hollis, who'd spent 6 years running from everything that hurt, finally stopped running. He sat in the rocking chair, held his daughter. His daughter, he realized, that's what she was now, and watched the stars through the window. 2 weeks to prove he deserved her. 2 weeks to figure out who he really was. He didn't know if it would be enough. But for the first time in 6 years, he wanted to find out. The next morning, Wade woke with a purpose he hadn't felt in years. He fed Hannah at dawn, changed her, dressed her in the yellow gown Martha had picked out. Then he carried her to Abigail's room and pushed open the door. Ruth found him there an hour later, surrounded by boxes, dust on his shirt, tears dried on his face. "Mr. Hollis, I'm clearing it out." Ruth stepped inside, looked at the half-empty shelves, the photos stacked in a wooden crate, the rocking horse still facing the wall. "You sure about this?" "Hannah needs the best room in the house, south-facing, warm, good light." Wade's voice was steady. "This is the best room." "It was Abigail's room." "It was. Now it'll be Hannah's." Ruth watched him for a long moment. Then she rolled up her sleeves. "Tell me where to start." They worked together, careful, reverent, each item wrapped in tissue paper before going into boxes, each photograph handled like sacred scripture. Wade held up a pink dress, size 4. Abigail had worn it to church the Easter before she died. Charlotte had made it by hand. Tiny stitches. Perfect hem. His throat closed. "Mr. Hollis?" Ruth's voice was gentle. "You don't have to do this all today." "Yes, I do." Wade folded the dress, set it in the box. "If I stop, I might not start again." They kept working. At noon, Ruth made sandwiches. Wade ate without tasting. Hannah napped in her basket on the hallway floor, close enough that he could hear her breathe. By 3 o'clock, the room was nearly empty, just the rocking horse left, and the small wooden chest in the corner, the one Charlotte had brought from her father's house when they married. Wade hadn't opened it since before Abigail was born. "What's in there?" Ruth asked. "Charlotte's things, letters, keepsakes. I don't know, never looked." "Maybe you should." Wade knelt beside the chest. The brass latch was tarnished. It took 3 tries to get it open. Inside, wrapped in faded silk, he found Charlotte's wedding veil, her mother's pearl earrings, a lock of blonde hair tied with ribbon, Abigail's from her first haircut, and a letter. Yellowed envelope. Charlotte's handwriting on the front. Wade's name in her careful script. His hands started shaking. "What is it?" Ruth asked. "I don't know. She never—" He turned it over. The seal was unbroken. "She never gave this to me." "When's it dated?" Wade looked at the postmark. "March 1878, 10 months before she died." Ruth went still. "You going to read it?" Wade stared at the envelope. His wife's handwriting. Her last words to him, maybe. Words she'd written and hidden and never delivered. "I don't know if I can." "Then don't. Not today. Not until you're ready." Wade looked at Hannah, sleeping peaceful in her basket, unaware of the bomb he held in his hands. "No." He slid his finger under the seal. "I've been hiding from the past for 6 years. Time to stop." He opened the letter. 2 pages, front and back. Charlotte's neat, precise handwriting. The writing of a woman who'd gone to finishing school back east before she married a rancher and moved to Wyoming. Wade read, "My dearest Wade, I'm writing this letter knowing you may never read it, knowing I may never have the courage to give it to you. But some things need to be said, even if only to paper. Abigail turned 5 today. She asked where you were. I told her Denver. Business. She asked if you loved her more than cows. I didn't know what to say." Wade's vision blurred. He kept reading. "I watch you with her on the rare days you're home. You love her. I know you do. But you love her from a distance, like she's something precious you're afraid to break. Or afraid to lose. I understand why. Losing me in childbirth nearly killed you. I see it in your eyes every time you look at her. The fear, the guilt, the way you pull back just when she needs you most." Wade's hands trembled. The paper shook. "I'm not writing this to blame you. I'm writing because I know something you don't. Something I've never told you. The doctor says I'm sick. Consumption. He gives me 2 years, maybe 3. I haven't told you because I know what it would do to you. How you'd pull away even further. How you'd start grieving me before I'm gone." Wade stopped breathing. Charlotte had been sick, dying, and he'd never known. "But I need you to understand something, Wade. Something important. When I'm gone, and I will be gone sooner than either of us wants, Abigail will need you. Not the distant father who shows up between cattle drives. The real you. The man I married. The man who held me all night when my mother died. The man who cried when Abigail was born. She'll need that man. And you'll have to find him again." Wade's tears fell onto the paper, smearing Charlotte's words. "I know you blame yourself for not being there when I died. I know you think if you'd been home you could have saved me. But Wade, listen to me. Really listen. You couldn't have saved me. The bleeding was too fast. The doctor said I had minutes, not hours. Even if you'd been holding my hand, I still would have died." His chest heaved. All these years believing he'd killed Charlotte by his absence. And she'd known. She'd known he would blame himself. And she'd written this letter to tell him the truth. "Don't let my death become your prison, Wade. Don't let it freeze you. Don't let it keep you from loving Abigail the way she deserves to be loved. And if when something happens to me and you find yourself alone, don't stay alone forever. Don't lock your heart away because you're afraid of losing again. Love is not a fixed quantity, Wade. It's not a well that runs dry. It's a river. The more you give, the more there is. Loving someone new doesn't mean loving me less. It means honoring what we had by refusing to let it die with me." Wade couldn't see the words anymore, couldn't see anything through the tears. "I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I'll have the courage to give it to you before I'm gone. But if you're reading it now after I'm dead, I need you to know one thing. I forgive you for not being there. I forgive you for the business trips and the late nights and the missed dinners. I forgive you for loving the ranch as much as you loved us. And I need you to forgive yourself. Be a father to our daughter, Wade. Be present. Be there. Don't let fear steal the years you have left with her. And if life ever gives you another chance at love, another child to raise, another heart to hold, take it. Take it and don't look back. I'll be watching, and I'll be proud. All my love forever." Charlotte Wade dropped the letter, fell back against the wall, and sobbed. Ruth came to him, knelt beside him, put her arms around him, and held him while he broke apart. "She knew." Wade gasped. "She knew I'd blame myself. She knew I'd freeze up. She wrote this letter to save me, and I never found it. You found it now. 6 years, Ruth. 6 years of prison for a crime she already forgave me for. 6 years of—" "Stop." Ruth's voice was firm. She pulled back, looked him in the eyes. "You listen to me. That woman loved you enough to write those words knowing she'd be dead when you read them. She loved you enough to forgive you before you even knew you needed forgiving." Ruth picked up the letter, pressed it into his hands. "Don't waste that gift. Don't spend another minute in that prison." She opened the door. "Walk through it." Wade looked at the letter. Charlotte's handwriting, Charlotte's love, Charlotte's blessing. And if life ever gives you another chance at love, another child to raise, another heart to hold, take it. He looked at Hannah, still sleeping, still peaceful, still completely unaware that her future had just been decided by a dead woman's words. "She's telling me to keep her," Wade whispered. "She's telling you to live." Ruth squeezed his shoulder. "Hannah's just the way you're going to do it." That evening, Wade sat in his study with the letter in one hand and the music box in the other. He read Charlotte's words again, and again, and again. Each time, something loosened in his chest. Some knot that had been tied so tight for so long he'd forgotten it was there. He picked up the telephone, cranked the handle. "Operator, get me Frank Murdoch in Laramie. Attorney at law." The line crackled. Connected. "Murdoch speaking." "Frank, it's Wade Hollis." "Wade, it's 8 o'clock at night." "I know. I need your help. What kind of help? Wade took a breath. I want to adopt a baby. I need to know how. Silence on the line. Then Frank's voice, careful and slow. Wade, are you talking about the baby you found in the storm? The one everyone's been gossiping about? Yes. You know how complicated that's going to be. I don't care. Single man over 40, no wife, no experience. I raised Abigail for 6 years. Abigail was your biological daughter. This is different. The courts? I don't care about the courts. Wade's voice hardened. I care about that baby. She needs a father. I need a daughter. I'm going to make this happen, Frank, with or without your help. Silence. Then Frank sighed. Come to my office tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Bring everything you have. Documents, witnesses, character references, everything. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. Wade looked at the music box, at Charlotte's letter, at the photograph of Abigail on his desk. No, he said quietly. The hardest thing I ever did was bury my daughter. This is just paperwork. He hung up. Ruth appeared in the doorway, Hannah in her arms. You called the lawyer. I did. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. Ruth smiled, the first real smile he'd seen on her face in days. Charlotte would be proud. I hope so. Wade stood, took Hannah from Ruth's arms. I really hope so. The next morning, Wade drove to Laramie with Hannah bundled in blankets beside him. Frank Murdoch's office was on Main Street, second floor above the bank. Wade climbed the stairs with Hannah in one arm and a folder of documents in the other. Frank was waiting. 52 years old, thick glasses. The kind of lawyer who'd seen everything and wasn't surprised by much. But when Wade walked in with the baby, Frank's eyebrows rose. You brought her. She goes where I go now. Wade. Just tell me what I need to do. Frank sat down, pulled out a notepad. All right, here's what we're looking at. Foster certification first. That's classes, inspections, background checks. Then petition for temporary custody. That gets you legal right to keep her while the adoption process works through the courts. How long? Foster certification 6 weeks minimum. Temporary custody hearing another month after that. Full adoption. Frank hesitated. 6 months to a year. Maybe longer. That's too long. That's the process. Wade's jaw tightened. What if they find her family in the meantime? If biological family comes forward, they have priority. Court will almost always side with blood relatives. And if no one comes forward, then we proceed with adoption. But Wade, I have to be honest, single male adoptions are almost unheard of. Judges don't like them. The system isn't designed for them. I don't care what the system likes. You're going to have to care, because that system is the only thing standing between you and that baby. Hannah made a sound. Wade looked down at her. She was watching him with those serious brown eyes. What do I need to prove? Wade asked quietly. That you're stable, financially secure, emotionally capable, that you have support friends, family people who can vouch for you. I have Ruth. Anyone else? Wade thought about it. Doc Finch, Sheriff Dawson. Martha at the general store. Jake, his foreman. I have people. Good. You're going to need them. Frank leaned forward. Wade, the woman from county welfare. Helen Thorne. She's going to be the key to all of this. Her recommendation will make or break your case. She's coming back in 2 weeks. Then you have 2 weeks to convince her you're the right man for this job. Wade looked at Hannah. She grabbed his finger, held on tight. I will be. That afternoon, Wade drove back to the ranch, his mind racing. 2 weeks to prove himself. 2 weeks to convince Helen Thorne that a broken rancher deserved a second chance at fatherhood. He was pulling up to the house when he saw the strange wagon in the yard. His stomach dropped. Ruth met him at the door, her face tight. Someone's here. Who? Woman from the county. Different one. Says she has questions about the baby. Wade's blood went cold. He handed Hannah to Ruth, walked into the front room. A woman stood by the window. Tall, severe, gray hair pulled back tight, clipboard in her hand. "Mr. Hollis." Her voice was flat. "I'm Margaret Crane, County Child Protective Services." "I already spoke with Helen Thorne. Mrs. Thorne is on leave. I'm handling her cases while she's gone." Wade's heart hammered. On leave? She was just here 3 days ago. Family emergency. Indefinite. Margaret Crane looked at her clipboard. "I've reviewed your file. I have concerns." "What kind of concerns?" "You're a single man, no spouse, no female presence in the home. Ruth Stonehorse lives here, works here. She's... Miss Stonehorse is an employee, not a wife, not a mother." Margaret's eyes were cold. "Mr. Hollis, I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen men like you before. Men like me. Lonely men, broken men. Men who think a baby will fix what's wrong with them." She stepped closer. "That child deserves a real family. 2 parents, stability. Not a grieving widower trying to replace what he lost." Wade felt the anger rise, hot and fast. "You don't know anything about me. I know you lost a daughter. I know your wife died. I know you've been living alone in this house for 6 years, and I know that baby needs more than a man with a hole in his heart. Get out." "Excuse me." "I said get out of my house." Wade's voice shook. "You come in here, you don't know me, you don't know that baby, and you tell me I'm not good enough. Get out." Margaret Crane's face hardened. "Mr. Hollis, I'm recommending immediate removal of the child to county custody." The world stopped. "You can't do that." "I can, and I will. For the child's protection." "Protection from what?" "From a man who saved her life. From a man who's fed her and held her and loved her for 2 weeks. From a man who's clearly unstable." Margaret made a note on her clipboard. "I'll have a deputy here tomorrow morning to collect the child." "No." Wade stepped between Margaret and the door. "Mr. Hollis, move aside. No, you're not taking her. Not tomorrow, not ever. This is not a request. It's a court order." "I don't see any court order. I see a woman with a clipboard and a grudge." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Be very careful, Mr. Hollis. Obstruction of a county official is a criminal offense. So is breaking into a man's home and stealing his daughter. She's not your daughter." "Yes." Wade's voice was quiet now. Deadly. "She is." They stood there, facing each other, 2 immovable forces. Then the front door opened. Helen Thorne walked in. Wade's heart nearly stopped. "Mrs. Thorne?" Margaret spun around. "I was told you were on leave." "I was. Family emergency resolved." Helen's eyes swept the room, took in the tension, the anger, the fear. "Margaret, what's going on here?" "I'm recommending removal of the child. This man is clearly..." "This man saved that baby's life." Helen's voice was sharp. "I've reviewed his file. I've interviewed his references. I've spent 3 hours in this house watching him with that child. Helen, protocol requires a thorough assessment, which I've done." Helen stepped forward. "Margaret, you've been here 15 minutes. You don't know this man, you don't know this case, and you certainly don't have the authority to override my assessment." Margaret's face reddened. "I'm senior officer, and I'm the assigned caseworker. This is my case, my recommendation." Helen turned to Wade. "Mr. Hollis, I apologize for the intrusion. Mrs. Crane will be leaving now." Margaret stood frozen, furious. "This isn't over, Helen." "Yes, it is." Helen opened the door. "Goodbye, Margaret." For a long moment, Margaret didn't move. Then she gathered her clipboard, her coat, her dignity, and left. The door closed behind her. Wade's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the nearest chair. Mrs. Thorne. Helen. She sat across from him. And don't thank me yet. Margaret Crane is well connected. She'll fight this. Why did you help me? Helen was quiet for a moment. Because I was an orphan myself, Sisters of Mercy Home in St. Louis. 11 years in that place. Cold, crowded, strict. Wade looked up. When I was 14, a man took me in. Single man. Widower. Teacher named Thomas Thorne. 53 years old. Everyone said no. Too old. Single. Inappropriate. She smiled. Soft. Sad. But Judge William Anderson approved it. Said I needed someone who showed up. And Thomas Thorne showed up. Every day. Every night. Taught me to read. To write. To believe I was worth something. He adopted you. Legally. Officially. Made me his daughter in every way that mattered. Helen's eyes were wet. He saved my life, Mr. Hollis, and I see the same thing in you. The same love. The same determination. Wade couldn't speak. You have your 2 weeks, Helen said. Make them count. She stood to leave. Helen. She turned. Thank you. Don't thank me. She opened the door. Prove me right. After she left, Wade sat alone in the quiet house. Ruth appeared in the doorway, Hannah in her arms. She's hungry. Wade stood, took Hannah, held her close. I'm going to fight for you, he whispered against her hair. Every day, every minute, I'm going to prove I deserve you. Hannah grabbed his collar, made her happy sound. And Wade Hollis, who'd spent 6 years believing he didn't deserve a second chance, finally started to believe he might. 3 days after Margaret Crane's visit, Wade rode to Billings alone, 90 miles through snow that was starting to melt at the edges. Spring coming early this year, or maybe just a false promise before another storm. He had questions that kept him up at night. Questions about a girl and a baby and a burlap sack with Miller's grain printed on the side. Sheriff Dawson had been asking around, checking hospitals, sending telegrams. But Wade couldn't wait anymore. He needed answers. Needed to know where Hannah came from, who had left her to die, and why. Ruth stayed behind with Hannah. Doc Finch promised to check in twice a day. Jake had orders to shoot anyone who came near the house without Wade's permission. It wasn't enough. Nothing felt like enough. But Wade went anyway. Billings General Hospital was a 3-story brick building that smelled like carbolic acid and suffering. Wade tied his horse outside and walked in with his hat in his hands. The nurse at the front desk looked up. Patricia Reyes, according to her nameplate. Young, tired, dark circles under her eyes. Help you. I'm looking for information about a baby born here late December. Patricia's face went professional. Careful. Sir, patient information is confidential. Wade pulled out the photograph he'd had taken last week, Hannah in his arms, both of them looking at the camera, her tiny hand on his collar. This baby was left to die in a blizzard December 28th. I found her. Saved her. I'm trying to adopt her, but I need to know where she came from. Patricia studied the photo. Her face softened. That's the Jane Doe baby. Wade's heart hammered. Tell me. She shouldn't have. Wade knew she shouldn't have. But something in his face, or maybe something in Hannah's photograph, made Patricia pull a file from the cabinet behind her desk. Jane Doe, 16, maybe 17 years old. Hispanic. Came in December 23rd in active labor. No identification. No emergency contact. Wouldn't give her name. Patricia read from the file. Delivered a healthy baby girl. 7 pounds 3 ounces. Mother and baby disappeared December 25th against medical advice. Christmas Day. Yes, sir. She just left. Took the baby and vanished. We called the sheriff, but there wasn't much they could do. No crime in leaving a hospital. She leave anything behind? Any clue where she was going? Patricia hesitated, then reached into the file, pulled out a piece of paper, edges worn like it had been handled many times. She left this under her pillow. We kept it in case she came back. Wade took the paper. His hands shook as he read. His name is Wade Hollis, Iron Creek Ranch near Laramie, Wyoming territory. He's a good man. He lost a daughter. He'll understand. Please tell him I'm sorry. Tell him she deserves better than me. Tell him her name should be Hannah. The world tilted. Wade sat down hard in the nearest chair. She knew me, he whispered. She planned this. She knew my name, knew about Abigail, knew where I lived. You know her? I don't. Wade's mind raced. I thought I didn't. But she must have. How would she know all this? Memory surfaced. Fragments. Summer 1885. Hay season. They'd hired extra help. Mexican families passing through looking for work. A girl, young, quiet, worked in the kitchen helping Ruth. What was her name? Can I keep this? Wade asked, holding up the note. Patricia looked uncertain. I should keep it in the file. Please. Wade's voice cracked. She left my daughter with me. I need to know why. Patricia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Bring it back if the mother ever comes forward. Wade rode back to Iron Creek with the note folded in his pocket, right over his heart. Hannah's mother had chosen him, deliberately, specifically, had kept the baby for 3 days after birth, then driven 70 miles in winter to leave her where Wade would find her, had made sure he'd hear her crying, had watched from somewhere to make sure he took her inside. Why? He got his answer that evening when he showed Ruth the note. Ruth read it. Her hand went to her mouth. Lord have mercy. That girl planned everything. You remember her? The girl who worked here last summer? Ruth thought for a moment. Mexican family. Father, mother, 2 daughters. Youngest one was maybe 16. Very quiet. Scared of something. Wore loose dresses. Loose dresses? I thought she was just shy. Ruth looked up. But maybe she was hiding something. Pregnancy. Must have been 4 or 5 months along when she was here. What was her name? Clara. Clara Mendoza. The name hit Wade like a punch. Clara, he repeated. I remember now. She served dinner one night. Quiet girl. Kept her head down. Never looked anyone in the eye. She was here July through August, left September. Said her family was going back to New Mexico territory. Wade paced the kitchen. But why me? Why leave her baby with me specifically? Ruth was quiet. Then her face changed. You remember that night in July? You were drinking. Rare for you. You sat right here at this table and talked about Abigail, about Charlotte leaving, about living alone in this big empty house. Wade stopped. That girl was here, Ruth continued. Clara. She was cleaning the pantry. I forgot she was there. She heard everything. Every word, about losing your daughter, about your wife, about being alone. The pieces fell into place. A 16-year-old girl, pregnant, desperate, no family support or worse. She'd heard Wade's confession, his grief, his loneliness, and somehow she'd seen not a broken man, but a good one. Someone who understood loss, someone who might understand her. She chose me because she thought I'd save her baby, Wade said. She chose you because she trusted you. Ruth's voice was soft. Out of every ranch, every man in Wyoming territory, she chose you. That night, Wade wrote a letter to Frank Murdoch, outlined everything, the note, the hospital, the girl named Clara Mendoza. Frank wrote back 3 days later. His response made Wade's heart sink. Legal complications. Without the mother's formal relinquishment, Hannah is technically abandoned property of Wyoming territory. You can file for guardianship, but if the mother appears and wants her back, You have no legal standing. The courts favor biological parents. My recommendation: find the girl. Get her to sign relinquishment papers, otherwise you're building on sand." Wade knew what he had to do. The next morning he saddled his horse at dawn. "Where you going?" Ruth asked from the porch. "Billings. Then wherever I have to." "To find the girl." "To find Clara, yes." Ruth came down the steps, Hannah in her arms. "You sure that's wise? What if she wants the baby back?" Wade took Hannah, held her close, breathed in the smell of her hair. "Then I need to know. I can't build a life on uncertainty. Can't raise her wondering every day if someone's going to come take her away. And if Clara does want her back," Wade's throat tightened, "then I'll figure out how to let her go." He kissed Hannah's forehead, handed her back to Ruth. "I'll be back in 3 days, maybe 4. Be careful." "Always am." He rode out. Didn't look back. Couldn't. Billings again. The hospital. Patricia Reyes remembered him. "Mr. Hollis, you're back. I need to find the girl, Clara Mendoza. Do you have any records? Any clue where she might have gone?" Patricia checked her files. "Nothing. She gave a false address. No next of kin listed." "Someone must know something." Patricia thought for a moment. "There's a shelter, St. Anne's, run by the Sisters of Charity. They take in women who have nowhere else to go. Pregnant girls, runaways, the desperate ones." She wrote down the address. "Try there." St. Anne's Women's Shelter was 2 blocks from the railroad station. A modest wooden building with a cross above the door. Wade knocked. A nun answered, old, stern. Eyes that had seen too much suffering to be surprised by anything. "Yes. I'm looking for a girl. Clara Mendoza, 17 years old. She may have come here after Christmas." The nun's face didn't change. "We don't discuss our residence. Please. She left her baby with me. I'm trying to adopt her. I just need..." "Left her baby. In a blizzard. She left a note. Said I'd understand. Said I'd take care of her." The nun studied him for a long moment. "Wait here." She disappeared inside. Wade waited. Minutes felt like hours. Finally the door opened again. A girl stepped out. 17 years old, but looking younger. Small frame. Dark hair pulled back in a braid. Eyes wary as a hunted animal. "Mr. Hollis." "Clara." They stood there, the silence stretched between them like a canyon. "I wanted to meet you," Wade said finally. "To thank you." Clara looked surprised. "Thank me for what?" "For trusting me with your daughter." Her eyes filled. Is she okay?" Wade pulled the photograph from his pocket, handed it to her. Clara took it with shaking hands, stared at Hannah's face. "She's beautiful," Clara whispered. "She's perfect. Growing every day, smiles now, laughs when I play piano." Clara traced Hannah's face in the photograph with one finger, gentle as prayer. "I only had her 5 days, kept her as long as I could, fed her, held her, loved her." She looked up, tears streaming. "But I knew I couldn't keep her, couldn't give her what she needed." "What happened to you?" Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke. "My uncle, when I was 14. I told my parents. They didn't believe me, said I was lying, making trouble." Wade's hands clenched. "When I got pregnant, they said it was my fault. Called me things I won't repeat. Kicked me out." Clara. "I worked at your ranch last summer. Hid the pregnancy under loose dresses. Heard you one night talking about your daughter who died. About your wife leaving. About being alone." She looked up, met his eyes. "And I thought maybe this man. Maybe he understands loss. Maybe he could love her the way I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever." "You could now." The words hurt coming out. "You're at the shelter. They can help you. get you on your feet, help you raise her." Clara shook her head. "I'm 17, no education, no money, no family. What kind of life could I give her?" "A life with her mother." "I'm not her mother." Clara's voice was firm now. Certain. "I gave birth to her. But I'm not her mother. You are. You're the one who saved her, who feeds her and rocks her and loves her. You're her parent, Mr. Hollis. I'm just the girl who made sure she got to you." Wade's vision blurred. "Clara, I need you to understand something. If you want her back, I'll give her to you. I'll help you. Money, a place to live, whatever you need. I don't want her back. But if you change your mind, I won't." Clara stepped closer. "Mr. Hollis, I made my choice the night I left her in that storm. The hardest choice anyone can make. I chose to give her a chance. A real chance. With someone who could love her the way she deserves." She pressed the photograph back into his hands. "Don't take that away from her. Don't take it away from me." "There are papers," Wade said, his voice rough. "Legal papers, relinquishment of parental rights. If you sign them, I'll sign whatever you need. It's permanent. Once you sign, you can't change your mind." "I know." Clara's eyes held his, steady, certain. "I want her to have everything I can't give her. A home, a father, safety, love. Promise me, Mr. Hollis, promise me you'll keep her safe." "I promise." Wade's voice broke. "On Abigail's memory, on my life, I promise." "Then I'll sign." The next morning, Frank Murdoch drove up from Laramie with the papers. They sat in a small room at the shelter, Clara on one side, Wade on the other. Frank between them with documents spread across the table. Relinquishment of parental rights. Territory of Wyoming. Clara Mendoza minor, represented by Sister Margaret as guardian, relinquishing all rights to baby girl named Hannah Rose, born December 23, 1885. Frank explained each section. Made sure Clara understood what she was signing. "This is permanent. Once you sign, you have no legal claim to the child. You understand? I understand. And you're doing this of your own free will. No one is pressuring you." Clara looked at Wade. "He offered to help me keep her. Give me money. A place to live. He's not pressuring me." "Then why are you signing?" "Because she deserves better than I can give her." Clara's voice was steady. "And Mr. Hollis can give her everything." She picked up the pen, signed her name. Sister Margaret witnessed. Frank notarized. It was done. Afterward, outside the shelter, Clara stopped Wade before he could leave. "Mr. Hollis." He turned. "Will you tell her something for me? Anything." Clara's eyes filled. "Tell her I loved her, that leaving her was the hardest thing I ever did, that I think about her every day, and that I hope someday she'll understand." "I'll tell her." Wade's voice cracked. "Every day." Clara nodded, wiped her eyes. "Will I ever see her again?" Wade thought about it. About Hannah growing up. About questions she'd ask someday. About the truth she deserved to know. "Do you want to?" "I don't know. Maybe someday. When I'm older. When I've figured out how to be a person instead of just scared all the time." "Then yes." Wade stepped closer. "When you're ready. When she's old enough to understand. If you want to see her, you know where we are." Clara tried to smile. Couldn't quite manage it. "You're a good man, Mr. Hollis. I knew it the night I heard you talking about Abigail. I knew you'd love my baby the way she deserves. Our baby now." Clara's face crumpled. "Yeah, our baby." She turned, walked back toward the shelter, stopped at the door. "Mr. Hollis?" "Yes." Her first word. What was it? Wade remembered the blizzard, the frozen sack, the impossible whisper that had saved them both. "Papa," he said. She said Papa. Clara smiled. A real smile this time. Broken but beautiful. "Good, that's good." She went inside. Wade watched the door close behind her. Then he mounted his horse and rode home. To his daughter. 3 days later, Wade sat in his kitchen with Hannah on his lap and the signed papers in front of him. Ruth stood at the stove, making soup, keeping busy. "So it's done," she said. "It's done," Clara signed. Frank filed the papers with the court. Hannah is legally free to be adopted. And the hearing? August. Frank says we have a strong case now. The relinquishment papers change everything. Ruth turned, looked at him, at Hannah. "How do you feel?" Wade thought about it. "I feel like I stole something. Like I took a baby from a 17-year-old girl who had nothing." "You didn't take her. Clara gave her." "I know, but Ruth—" Wade looked at Hannah. "That girl loved her daughter enough to let her go, loved her enough to walk away. How do you live with that kind of sacrifice?" "You honor it." Ruth came to the table, sat across from him. "You raised that baby the way Clara wanted her raised, safe, loved, happy. You be the father Clara trusted you to be." Hannah grabbed Wade's finger, made her happy sound. "She's got two mothers now," Wade said quietly. "One who gave her life, one who gave her a chance. Both loved her, both sacrificed for her. And one father who's going to spend the rest of his life making sure it was worth it." Wade looked at Ruth. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being here, for helping me, for not letting me give up." Ruth smiled, touched his hand. "You wouldn't have given up. That baby wouldn't let you." That night, Wade carried Hannah upstairs to the yellow room. The one that used to be Abigail's. The one he'd spent 2 weeks painting and preparing and filling with everything a baby could need. He put her in the crib. The one he'd built himself, working late at night, remembering skills from 20 years ago. She fussed, reached for him. "I know," Wade said. "I know you want me to hold you, but you need to sleep, and I need to practice letting you go." He wound the music box, set it on the dresser where she could hear it. Brahms' lullaby filled the room. Hannah's eyes closed, her breathing slowed, deepened. Wade stood at the crib, watching her sleep. "Your mama Clara loved you," he whispered. "She loved you so much she gave you away. That's the hardest kind of love, the kind that lets go." Hannah sighed in her sleep. "And your mama Charlotte, she never met you, but she would have loved you, would have been proud to call you granddaughter." Wade touched the music box. Let the melody play out. "And Abigail, your sister, she's watching over you right now. I believe that. I have to believe that." He leaned down, kissed Hannah's forehead. "You're mine now, legally, officially, forever. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning that." He left the room, closed the door softly behind him. In the hallway he stopped, looked at the closed door to his right. Abigail's room. Empty now, waiting for new purpose. He thought about Clara, walking back into that shelter, alone. 17 years old. No family, no future. She'd given up everything so Hannah could have something. Wade made a decision. Tomorrow he'd send money to St. Anne's, anonymously, enough to help Clara get on her feet, get an education, build a life. It wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough, but it was something. He went to his study, sat at his desk, pulled out paper and pen, started writing. "Dear Clara, by the time you read this, the adoption will be final. Hannah will be my daughter in every way the law allows. But I want you to know something. She will always be yours too, your blood, your sacrifice, your love. I will tell her about you, when she's old enough to understand. I will tell her that her first mother loved her so much, she let her go. That's the kind of love most people never experience. The kind that puts someone else's needs above your own. You asked me to promise to keep her safe. I will. Every day. Every night. For the rest of my life. But I'm making another promise too. To you. Someday when you're ready, when you've built the life you deserve, come find us. Come see the woman Hannah has become. Come know that your sacrifice was worth it. Until then, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. And know that somewhere in Wyoming, a little girl with your eyes is loved beyond measure. With gratitude, Wade Hollis. He sealed the letter, addressed it to St. Anne's, left it on his desk to mail in the morning. Then he went upstairs, checked on Hannah one more time. She was sleeping, peaceful, safe. Wade stood in the doorway, watching her breathe. 4 months ago, he'd been a ghost, walking through this house, waiting to die. Now he had a daughter, a purpose, a reason to keep going. Clara had given him that. A 17-year-old girl with nothing had given him everything. "Thank you," Wade whispered into the darkness. He didn't know if Clara could hear him. Didn't know if the words would ever reach her. But he said them anyway. Because some things needed to be spoken, even if only to the night. August 15th, 1886. Laramie County Courthouse. Wade stood outside the courtroom doors with Hannah in his arms. 8 months old now, growing every day, dark hair curling around her ears, brown eyes watching everything with that serious expression he'd come to love. Ruth stood beside him, Doc Finch behind them, Jake Donovan, Martha from the general store, Sheriff Dawson. All of them here, all of them ready to speak for him. Frank Murdoch checked his pocket watch. 5 minutes? Wade's hands were sweating. Hannah squirmed against his chest. "You nervous?" Ruth asked. "Terrified." "Good. Means you care." The courtroom doors opened. A bailiff stepped out. Hollis adoption hearing. Judge Margaret Ashford presiding. Wade took a breath, stepped forward. This was it. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd fought for, everything he'd become in the past 8 months. It all came down to this. The courtroom was small, wooden benches, high windows, an American flag behind the judge's bench. Judge Margaret Ashford sat at the front, 54 years old. Gray hair pulled back severe, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. One of the first female judges in Wyoming territory, known for being fair, known for being hard. Wade walked to the front, took his seat at the petitioner's table. Frank beside him. Helen Thorne sat in the gallery. She nodded at Wade, encouraging. Margaret Crane sat across the aisle, her face like stone. Wade's stomach dropped. He leaned toward Frank. "What's she doing here?" "She filed an objection, last minute, claiming you're unfit." "Can she do that?" "Anyone can file an objection. Doesn't mean the judge will listen." But Wade saw the way Judge Ashford looked at the papers in front of her. The way her brow furrowed. This wasn't going to be easy. "All rise," the bailiff called. Everyone stood. Judge Ashford picked up a folder, opened it. Case number 1-1886-247. Petition for adoption. Wade Thomas Hollis petitioning for full legal adoption of minor child Hannah Rose born December 23, 1885. She looked at Wade. "Mr. Hollis, approach." Wade handed Hannah to Ruth, walked to the bench. His legs felt like water. "Mr. Hollis, I've reviewed your petition. I've read every document, every report, every reference." Judge Ashford's eyes were sharp, assessing. "This is highly unusual. A single man, an infant girl, mysterious circumstances. No precedent in this territory." "Yes, Your Honor." "Tell me why." "Why what, Your Honor? Why do you want to be this child's father?" Wade had prepared an answer. Something about stability, resources, opportunity. But standing there looking up at a judge who held his entire future in her hands, all the prepared words vanished. "Because she's mine," he said simply. "And I'm hers." Judge Ashford's expression didn't change. "Explain." "She was left to die in the worst blizzard in 20 years. I found her. Heard her whisper Papa even though she was too young to talk. Brought her home. Fed her. Rocked her. Played music for her." Wade's voice cracked. "And somewhere in those first days, she stopped being someone else's child and became mine. Not by blood, not by law, but in every way that matters. You lost a daughter. Judge Ashford's voice was sharp. Abigail, 6 years ago. Wade's chest tightened. Yes, Your Honor. Are you trying to replace her? He'd known this question was coming, had dreaded it, had spent 8 months figuring out how to answer. I thought I was, he admitted. At first, I put Hannah in a room near Abigail's nursery, played Abigail's music box for her, dressed her in colors Abigail liked. He paused, gathered himself. But then I realized something. Hannah is not Abigail. She's got dark hair where Abigail had blonde, brown eyes where Abigail had blue, different face, different laugh, different everything. His voice steadied. I don't love her because she fills a hole. I love her because she's Hannah, because she chose me, because she makes me want to be better than I was. Judge Ashford was quiet. Then she turned to the gallery. Mrs. Thorne, your assessment. Helen stood. Unequivocal approval, Your Honor. In 15 years of social work, I've never seen a more committed parent. Elaborate. Mr. Hollis has completed foster certification, passed every background check, maintained consistent medical care for the child, established a stable home environment with reliable support. Helen paused. But more than that, Your Honor, he shows up. Every day. Every night. That's what children need. Someone who shows up. Mr. Hollis shows up. Judge Ashford nodded. Mrs. Crane, I understand you've filed an objection. Margaret Crane stood, her face triumphant. Your Honor, this man is unfit. He's a single male with no spouse, no female presence in the home. Miss Ruth Stonehorse lives and works at the Hollis Ranch. An employee, not a wife, not a mother. Margaret's voice rose. Your Honor, I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen men like Mr. Hollis before. Lonely men, broken men, men who think a baby will fix what's wrong with them. She pointed at Wade. That man lost his daughter because he chose business over family. He was 200 miles away while she died calling his name. What kind of father does that? Wade felt the words like a knife. Mrs. Crane, Judge Ashford's voice was sharp. I asked for an objection, not a character assassination. The character is the objection, Your Honor. This man is emotionally unstable, grief-stricken, desperate. He doesn't want a daughter. He wants absolution. That's enough. Your Honor, I said enough. Judge Ashford's gavel came down. Sit down, Mrs. Crane. Margaret sat, but her eyes stayed on Wade, triumphant, cruel. Judge Ashford turned back to Wade. Mr. Hollis, Mrs. Crane raises a valid point. Your daughter died while you were away on business. How do I know you won't make the same mistake again? Wade's throat closed. I can't promise I won't make mistakes, Your Honor. I can't promise I'll be perfect. No parent can. He looked at Hannah, Ruth holding her in the gallery, those serious brown eyes watching him. But I can promise I'll be there. Every day, every night, every moment that matters. Because I learned something when Abigail died. I learned that nothing else matters. Not money, not land, not business, not anything. His voice broke. The only thing that matters is showing up for the people you love. And I will show up for Hannah. Until the day I die. Judge Ashford studied him for a long moment. Miss Stonehorse. Ruth stood, handed Hannah to Doc Finch. You've known Mr. Hollis how long? 18 years, Your Honor. Your assessment. Ruth stepped forward. Her voice was strong. That man was dead inside, Your Honor. Walking but not living. Then he found that baby and she woke him up. Brought him back to life. She looked at Wade. He's not perfect. He's broken. But broken people can love just as hard as whole ones. Maybe harder. That baby needs him, and he needs her. That's family. Judge Ashford nodded. Dr. Finch? Doc stood, Hannah still in his arms. Medical assessment of the child. Healthy, Your Honor. Thriving. Weight gain consistent. Development on track. No signs of neglect or abuse. Mr. Hollis has been exemplary in his care. And his mental state? Doc hesitated. He's grieving, Your Honor. Still. Probably always will be. But grief doesn't disqualify someone from being a parent. If it did, half the mothers and fathers in this territory would lose their children. He looked at Wade. He's doing the work, facing his pain, learning to love again. That takes courage, more courage than most people have. Judge Ashford made a note. Sheriff Dawson. The sheriff stood. You investigated the circumstances of this child's abandonment. Yes, Your Honor. Your findings. The child was abandoned in a blizzard on December 28, 1885. Mr. Hollis found her, saved her life. The biological mother, Clara Mendoza, has signed relinquishment papers. No other family has come forward. And Mr. Hollis's involvement. He was in the right place at the right time, Your Honor. Nothing more, nothing suspicious. Sheriff Dawson paused. If you want my opinion, that baby is lucky. Lucky someone heard her crying. Lucky it was a man with the strength to carry her through a blizzard. Lucky it was Wade Hollis. Judge Ashford closed her folder. The courtroom held its breath. Mr. Hollis. Wade stood straight. I've heard the testimony. I've reviewed the evidence. I've considered the unusual nature of this case. A pause that felt like dying. And I've decided that what matters most is not how this child came to you, but what you've done since she arrived. Wade couldn't breathe. You've shown up. You've been present. You've loved her. That's what children need. That's what Hannah needs. Judge Ashford picked up her gavel. Adoption granted. Hannah Rose is legally your daughter. Congratulations, Mr. Hollis. The gavel came down. Wade's knees buckled. Frank caught his arm, steadied him. You did it, Frank said. She's yours. The courtroom erupted. Ruth crying, Doc grinning, Martha hugging the sheriff, everyone talking at once. But Wade heard none of it. He walked to the gallery, to Ruth, to Hannah. Ruth placed her in his arms. She's yours forever. Hannah looked at him, smiled, reached up and patted his face with her tiny hand. Dada, she said, clear. Unmistakable. First real word. Wade's vision blurred. Yeah, sweetheart? Dada? He held her close, felt her heart beating against his chest, felt the weight of her, the reality of her. His daughter. Legally, officially, forever. Margaret Crane pushed past them, her face twisted with fury. This isn't over, Hollis. That child deserves a real family. 2 parents. A mother, not a broken man playing house. Wade looked at her, calm now, certain. She has a real family. Me, Ruth, Doc. Everyone in this room who loves her. That's not... Family isn't blood, Mrs. Crane. It's not marriage certificates or matching last names. Family is the people who show up, who stay, who love you even when it's hard. He held Hannah closer. I'm her family, and I always will be. Margaret opened her mouth to respond. Helen Thorne stepped between them. Margaret, walk away. This is a travesty of justice. Walk away. Margaret looked at Helen, at the steel in her eyes, at the warning there. She turned, left the courtroom. Helen watched her go, then turned to Wade. Congratulations, Mr. Hollis. Thank you, for everything. Don't thank me. Thank her. Helen looked at Hannah. She's the one who chose you. I just made sure the law caught up. Outside, they gathered on the courthouse steps. August sunshine, blue sky, mountains in the distance. Wade stood with Hannah in his arms, his family around him. We should celebrate, Martha said. Dinner at my place, all of you. That's kind of you, ma'am, Wade said. But I think Hannah and I need to go home. Home. Yeah. Wade looked at his daughter. Home. They drove back to Iron Creek Ranch as the sun started to set. Ruth beside him, Hannah in her arms, the wagon rolling through fields that were starting to turn gold with late summer. "You're quiet," Ruth said. "Just thinking." "About what?" Wade looked at the mountains, at the sky, at everything he'd almost lost and everything he'd found. "About Clara. About what she gave up so Hannah could have this." "You sent her the letter?" "Sent it the day after she signed the papers. And the money." Ruth nodded. "She'll be all right. That girl's strong, stronger than she knows." "I hope so." They rode in silence for a while. Then Ruth spoke again. "What are you going to tell Hannah when she's older about Clara?" Wade thought about it. The truth, all of it. That her first mother loved her so much she let her go. That her second mother, Charlotte, died before she was born, but would have loved her too. That love isn't about keeping, it's about giving, even when it breaks your heart. Hannah stirred, made a sound. Wade took her from Ruth, held her against his chest. "And I'll tell her about Abigail, her sister, who's watching over her from somewhere we can't see." "That's a lot for a child to understand." "She'll understand, when she's ready." They reached the ranch at dusk. Wade carried Hannah inside, up the stairs, to the yellow room. He put her in the crib. She fussed, reached for him. "I know," he said. "I know you want me to hold you, but you need to sleep. And I need to practice letting you be." He wound the music box, set it on the dresser. Brahms's lullaby filled the room. Hannah's eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. Wade stood at the crib, watching her sleep. "You're mine now," he whispered. "Legally, officially, forever. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning that." He touched the music box. Let the melody play out. "Your mama Clara loved you enough to let you go. Your mama Charlotte loved you before she ever knew you. Your sister Abigail is watching over you right now." He leaned down, kissed her forehead. "And your papa loves you more than all the stars in the sky, more than all the land in Wyoming, more than anything he's ever loved in his whole life." Hannah sighed in her sleep. Wade left the room, closed the door softly. Ruth was waiting in the hall. "You okay?" "Yeah." Wade looked at the closed door. "Yeah, I think I am." "First time you've said that and meant it. First time I've felt it." They went downstairs. Ruth made coffee. Wade sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd found the note from Charlotte, where he'd fed Hannah her first bottle, where he'd made the decision to fight for her. "What now?" Ruth asked. "Now we live. We raise her. We give her everything we've got. And the ranch. The ranch can run itself for a while. Jake knows what he's doing." Wade wrapped his hands around the coffee cup. "Hannah's more important. She'll always be more important." Ruth smiled. "Charlotte would be proud." "I hope so." They sat in silence, the comfortable silence of people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. Then Ruth stood. "I should go. Let you have your first night as a legal father." "Ruth." She turned. "Thank you. For everything. For being here. For not giving up on me. For loving her." Ruth's eyes filled. "She's easy to love." "So are you." Ruth laughed, wiped her eyes. "Good night, Mr. Hollis." "Good night, Ruth." She left. Wade sat alone in the quiet kitchen. His kitchen, his house, his ranch, his life, and upstairs his daughter. He thought about the past 8 months, the blizzard, the frozen sack, the impossible whisper that had changed everything. He thought about Clara, 17 years old, walking back into that shelter, alone but not broken. He thought about Charlotte, the letter she'd written, the forgiveness she'd offered before he even knew he needed it. He thought about Abigail, her laugh, her smile, the way she'd called him Papa with such complete trust. And he thought about Hannah, her serious eyes, her tiny fingers, The way she grabbed his collar like she'd never let go. "Thank you," he said to the empty room, to Charlotte, to Abigail, to Clara, to whatever force had put him in that blizzard at exactly the right moment. "Thank you for giving me another chance." He stood, walked to the window, stars coming out. The same stars he'd watched 8 months ago, the night he found her. Everything different now, everything the same. He went upstairs, checked on Hannah one more time. She was sleeping, peaceful, safe. His daughter. Wade stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching her breathe. Then he went to his own room, lay down on his bed. For the first time in 6 years, he slept without nightmares. December 1925. Iron Creek Ranch, Wyoming. 40 years later. Wade Hollis sat in his leather chair by the fire. 84 years old now, hands weathered, back bent, but eyes still sharp. His great-granddaughter Eleanor sat at his feet. 13 years old, dark hair, brown eyes, Hannah's eyes. "Tell me again, great-grandpa, how you found Grandma Hannah." Wade smiled, looked at the music box on the mantel, the same music box that had played for Abigail, for Hannah, for Hannah's daughter, for Eleanor. "It was a night just like this one," he said. "Snow falling, wind howling, cold enough to freeze your breath before it left your lungs." Eleanor leaned forward, eyes wide. "And you heard her crying?" "I heard something, high, thin, wrong, something dying." "But you saved her." "I found her, in a burlap sack, frozen near to death, and she opened her eyes and looked at me and said one word." "Papa," Eleanor whispered. "Papa," even though she was too young to talk, even though she'd never seen me before. She said Papa like she knew me, like she'd been waiting for me her whole short life. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "And you kept her." "I kept her, fought for her, made her mine, and she made me hers." The door opened. Hannah walked in. 61 years old now, gray in her dark hair, lines around her eyes, but still his daughter, still his heart. "Papa?" She crossed to him, kissed his forehead. "You're telling the story again." She asked. She always asks. Hannah sat on the arm of his chair, took his weathered hand in hers. "Tell her the rest, Papa. Tell her about Clara." Wade looked at Eleanor. "Your great-grandmother had 2 mothers. One who gave her life, one who gave her a chance. Both loved her, both sacrificed for her." "Did you ever see Clara again?" "Once. When Hannah was 25, Clara came to visit. She'd married by then, had 2 sons, a ranch of her own in California." "What did she say?" Wade remembered. The way Clara had looked at Hannah, the tears streaming down her face. The way she'd said thank you over and over until the words lost meaning. She said it was worth it, all of it, every hard day and lonely night, seeing Hannah grown and happy and loved. She said it made everything worth it. Eleanor wiped her eyes. "That's the most beautiful story I've ever heard." "It's the most beautiful story I ever lived." Hannah squeezed his hand. "Clara died 2 years ago, peacefully, in her sleep. Her son sent a letter." "I know. She asked to be buried with the photograph, the one you gave her the day she signed the papers." Wade's throat tightened. "I know." Hannah leaned her head against his shoulder. "Thank you, Papa." "For what?" "For saving me, for keeping me, for being my father." "Thank you for letting me." They sat together, 3 generations, bound by love stronger than blood. The music box sat on the mantel, silent now, but Wade could still hear it. Brahms' lullaby, playing through the years, connecting past to present to future. "Grandma." Eleanor's voice was soft. Hannah looked at her. "Will you play the music box?" Hannah stood, walked to the mantel, lifted the box with reverent hands, wound the brass key, let it play. Brahms' lullaby filled the room, the same melody that had played for Charlotte, for Abigail, for Hannah, for Eleanor. Wade closed his eyes, listened, and remembered. The blizzard, the frozen sack, the impossible whisper. Papa. One word that had saved two broken souls. One word that had started a family. One word that had changed everything. Hannah set the music box down, came back to Wade's chair, took his hand again. "I love you, Papa. I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the stars." Eleanor climbed into his lap, curled against his chest, the way Hannah had done 60 years ago. "Tell me again," she whispered. "Tell me about the whisper in the blizzard." Wade held her close. His great-granddaughter, his legacy, his proof that love never dies. "It was a night just like this one," he said. "Snow falling, wind howling, and somewhere in the darkness, a baby was crying." Outside, the snow continued to fall, gentle, clean, covering the world in white. The same snow that had tried to take Hannah 60 years ago was now blessing the ground where 4 generations gathered. The whisper in the blizzard had become a song, and the song would never end. Because love doesn't end. It doesn't fade. It doesn't die. It just keeps playing. Generation after generation. Forever and always. The music box fell silent, but in the hearts of everyone in that room the melody continued. And Wade Hollis, who had once been a ghost walking through an empty house, smiled. He had found his daughter, she had found her father, and together they had found their way home.